your shoulders, your neck. Just get moving a bit, you know? Go like this. Yeah. We used to do this in Taekwondo. All right. So let's go. Everyone sit up straight. So what we're going to do is I'm going to guide you through a process of just peace, finding some peace, because this is what meditation is all about. This is how we're going to be happy, just by getting our minds out the way a little bit. So if you sit up straight and close your eyes, the Prabhu Sapora, keep them open. And you just take a few very deep breaths, and you can sigh on your way out, but not a sigh of sadness, a sigh of sweetness, a sweet sigh. Okay, so this is what we're going to imagine today. You're going to imagine that your mind, your thoughts, are really like a river. And the river's flowing through your head, and you're watching the thoughts as they flow past. Now, actually, you might find that when you start this, the thoughts come a bit slower. They could even be like fish swimming through the river in front. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to just watch the thoughts as they go past, without judging them and without judging ourselves. Just their thoughts. So we're going to be breathing very deeply and smiling. And then breathing out. And we're sitting on the banks of the river, and it's a beautiful sunny day. And there are trees. And breeze. You feel there's nowhere you need to go, no pressure, no email, nothing you need to do. You're just sitting and enjoying, sitting on the banks of the river, breathing deeply and smiling. And then thoughts might start to come. They might be positive thoughts, they might be neutral thoughts, they might be negative thoughts, but whatever the thoughts are, just watch them float down the river. Thoughts naturally come and then they naturally go. You don't need to fight them or push them away. Just let them flow past. Breathing and smiling and enjoying the sun on your face. And if you feel yourself falling into the river and getting caught up in your thoughts and just drifting off and daydreaming, just gently pull yourself out of the river again. Shake yourself off. And just sit calmly breathing, smiling, enjoying the sun and watching the thoughts floating past. You can even put your feet into the river. Feel the cold water, cool water. It's just flowing past. Not over-analyzing. Not making anything so meaningful. Detached somewhat from your thoughts. Just enjoying the breeze and the sun and the cool water on your feet. And if you feel like while you're doing this, stretching your neck or your shoulders, just be aware of what your body needs. And gently stretch your neck and your shoulders and twist in your chair. And if you feel like taking one very, very, very deep breath and then breathing out and sighing to let go of any stress or tension or anything you have, then do that too. Just breathing in very, very deeply, filling your lungs. And just breathing out, releasing all tension. Breathing and smiling. Remember, when thoughts come in, if they're about the future or about the past, just watch them going. Don't hold on to them, don't make them significant. Just for now. Later you can think about them, but now we're not doing that. Now we're just finding space, finding peace, giving ourselves the permission to tap into a place of calm, sun on our face, breeze, feet in the water. See if you can really focus on your breath coming in and out. Every time your mind wanders, you can quieten your mind. And if you find this really challenging, that's okay. Find it amusing that you find it challenging. Don't get caught up in that. Just, it's interesting. And let go. Let go of it needing to be easy or needing to feel something, or don't judge yourself. Don't judge the exercise. Just breathing, smiling. Effortless effort. You're not trying. You're just watching. Passively watching what's going on inside you, your thoughts and your feelings. Going with the flow of your breath and letting the river flow past with all thoughts and feelings. Okay, take three more very, 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 very deep breaths and smile. You've got to remember to smile. It's really important. Deep breaths, smiling. And just to finish, I want you to choose one thought, one positive thought that you want to be your intention for the day, and put that into your calm mind. I'm looking forward to the day. I'm feeling good. I'm grateful. Once you find space in your mind, you can choose what you want to put in there. So start putting positive, uplifting things in there. Okay. I'll pass you on to our next presenter.
Thank you, Dove Bear.
Thank you, Rabbi Cowland.
Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing well. It's the only thing that's better than a cup of coffee in the morning is a cup of Dove Bear Cohen. So I wanted to welcome everyone back. It's good to see everyone. see some of you. I can't see all of you, but to see your names or your aliases. Hey, Steve. Or your aliases. Aviva. Okay, good. People, we have people coming out of their cameras, which is great. No pressure, but it's great if you can show me your face. I appreciate it. But again, no pressure if it doesn't work for you. So I wanted to speak. Hey, Cheryl. Wow, Malka. Oh my gosh, this is like a who's who. It's like a who's who of who. So, so I wanted to, you know, to kind of such a strange, strange situation. The world's kind of starting to come out of this Corona thing now. Some people think it's too early. Some people think it's too late. Probably everyone's wrong, except for the people who are right. We don't really know. And I was thinking a lot about, over this time, about calm and about this kind of incredible thing. Just for example, there's probably people on this call right now who might say to themselves, I'm not such a meditator. Well, it's not really how I work, you know? And I understand that. But what's bizarre about the meditation or all of these experiences is that you begin to realize, if you just try it, even if it's not for you, that there are different states of mind you can be in that genuinely affect your experience of your life. And I don't know about you guys, but I battle all of the time with the idea that kind of the world is fixed and that the world kind of spits kind of reality back at me. And no matter what I do, I have to kind of get in line with reality. But the truth is, when I'm calm and thinking more deeply about things, I realize that there's really a lot of different ways to interact and to really control your own experience. You know, I just had a conversation with one of my, you know, just as an example, we had a conversation with one of my kids, you know, and when my kid says something to me that like makes it where he's being negative, let's say, so there's a part of my head that starts saying, oh my gosh, you know, if he carries on with that attitude, oh, he's never gonna finish school, or he's gonna this, or he's gonna that, and then he's gonna end up living under a railway bridge, and my life's gonna be over, and his life, all right? And I'm feeling like all of this tension and frustration. And then there's like another thought that comes into my head, which is like, he's really exploring himself, and he's really trying to figure stuff out. Like, it's gutsy, and it's a really important thing, you know? And then I'm like, yeah, everything's gonna be fine. Everything's just gonna be great, you know? And then there's something that happens, then something else comes across, you know, like another thought right in the middle, and it's hard to know. It's hard to know which one's right, you know. It's really hard to know which one's right. But I do know which one is less stressful, and I do know the one that, you know, and I do know the one that ends up being right most of the time, and that's the one that's trusting. Because in the end, and that's the one that's kind of filled with, I don't know if this makes any sense, that makes me feel most connected. And I don't want to talk around this concept because I know it sounds fluffy, but it's really not fluffy actually. And that is that the reality is of our existence, and this is not coming from even from a spiritual place. This is really like demonstrably true. It's demonstrably true in every situation you find yourself in, right? And that is that what's going on most of the time is interpretation. What's causing your mood is your interpretation of your experience. Stuff is happening. Stuff is happening, right? You know, let's say someone, I don't know, after a class that I give or after a session that I give, you know, sometimes you get feedback. That feedback could be negative. right? So you could take that and say that's, you know, constructive. I can use that in a really good way, and then you appreciate it. Or you could just feel like beaten down by it. And whichever way you choose to interpret it, that's how it really is how you're going to feel. And I can't make this point enough, because to me, it really is one of the like main keys to life, is to appreciate that it's all interpretation. There's very little that's happening that's actually objective in terms of our experience. There's stuff that happens objectively, like, oh, you know, I just banged my knee, or oh, I just got a job, or I just lost my job, right? Those things are happening objectively. But it's your interpretation of those things that's going to really define your experience. And the more deeply you think about that, and the more deeply you track that, and the more you see that that's true or real, if it is for you, and I believe it will be, yeah, you experience freedom, real freedom. Because here's the crazy thing, basically your interpretation is like, oh, it's all amazing, or it's like all going wrong. That's kind of how they break down. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is all going to go wrong, this is all going to go wrong, you know? And then I noticed, like, well, hang on, what about interpreting that? Like, well, even if it all goes wrong, yeah, is it really going to go that wrong, you know? And the answer there is no, probably not. Like, really, probably not. So in the end, what we've got in our own circumstances and our own situations is we can kind of shine light on our own experience, and then we have a way through life that works, where we're balanced and in a good place. Because if my kid's saying, like, you know, Dad, I want to drop out of school, right? And I can shine light, which my kid did not say, by the way, but let's just say that he did, you know? And I can shine light on that and love on that and not be in my own head about that and not be freaking out about that from my perspective. Then, I know it sounds crazy, but he's less likely to go to even to do the dumb thing, right? Because he's going to feel support, he's going to feel good, he's going to feel goodness from me. But if I try and shut him down and I'm not validating and I'm not this, that, and the other, I haven't found like a comfortable place, then he's more likely to feel isolated. It's the same thing in every communication with kids, with bosses, with co-workers, with ourselves. You've got to shine light on the situation. And really, when other people are interacting with us, you've got to find the light in what they're trying to shine on you. And it all sounds like so hippie and so dreamy and this, that, and the other. But the alternative is that you're living in a reality where you think everything's going to go wrong all of the time. And, you know, if you've watched the news over Corona, you see what it's like when the media is just like, oh, there's been another breakout, and oh, and what about this? And just like the fear-mongering and the craziness, the frenzy. And then you think, well, am I doing that in my own head? And the answer is, yeah. We do that in our own heads. We just spend our times worrying about things that aren't going to happen, and even if they did happen, they wouldn't be that bad. Rather than finding the interpretation of them that is empowering and beautiful and fills us with light and fills us with love. And even when we look at our own strengths, even when we look at our own selves, our own opportunities, even without stuff happening to us, just where can I shine the light? Where can I give? Where can I be focused? Where can I be giving? There's so many beautiful stories of people that have been giving during this time. There's so many amazing moments that we've all had or shared or experienced. So, you know, when we think about calm and we think about perspective, and just think about what works, think about what makes people feel good, and think about what makes us feel good. And like I always like to say, you know, in the end, that's what Tikkun Olam is all about. What real fixing the world is about creating an environment around ourselves where people intuit how to be loving and kind and good rather than to be selfish and taking and small-minded. Because every act that requires Tikkun Olam, every act that requires fixing out there in the world is always because somebody was worried that something was going to go wrong that wasn't, and therefore took advantage and therefore exploited and therefore caused pain to another, where instead they could have been generous of spirit and heart and given love. It's a person choosing to be small where they could have chosen to be big, chosen to be narrow where they could have chosen to be broad. And that's, you know, like I always say, that's Tikkun Olam. That's what we're trying to do. We've got to get people, and we've got to get the world into a place of generosity, of spirit, of kindness. And we've got to shine that in on ourselves as well, right? Especially during this crazy time. Right? So there's so much pressure on everybody, so much fear. I met with someone yesterday, socially distanced, don't worry, warriors, it was all good, yeah? And he's like, yeah, you know, I run a business in Jerusalem and a bunch of my friends are closing their businesses. They're just not reopening. Like, people are in a bad place. They're scared, right? They're scared. But at the same time, they know there's going to be something else that's come along. People are moving forward. It's shining the light. It's not going into panic mode in every situation that you possibly can. It's a big deal. So practice that if you possibly can, to be clear, just to become, like Dov Bear says, observe yourself. I say, observe the option that you have to shine light rather than to suck in darkness. Observe the opportunity to give versus to take, to be open rather than to close. And check for yourself what makes you feel better and what creates a nicer reality for everyone around you. That's what I recommend, you know? That's what I think people should be kind of practicing and working on. And that's when you begin to understand Tikkun Olam, because you can find the space inside of yourself that's pure generosity of spirit. Just 1 second. It's not really, okay. So I'm going to hand over. You'll notice that our name here today is the Cowlands. That's because Ilana's about to take over from me right now. So here she is. And everyone should have a great day. And I'll speak to you soon.
What? Oh, so nice. All right. Hi, everyone. Smile. There we go. Then I can know that you hear me. Okay. Not to suggest that you weren't smiling, but yeah. All right. So, okay. Question came in. This is a question. You can actually translate the question and switch the central word in into other words. You'll see what I mean. The basic question that comes in often, a dating question, is, what if we're not in the same place religiously? And you can change that question religiously to spiritually, ambitiously, whatever the value is that you are struggling because you're not on the same place as. Has anybody experienced that before, dating wise? Yeah, of course you have. Okay, good. All right. So it was a good question then. Thank you. Okay. And again, if you've got any more questions, please send them in via the Instagram, Ilana and Jamie. Strudel, Ilana and Jamie. Okay. So so first of all, I don't mean to be judgmental. I do. Okay, I'm going to be really judgmental for a minute. Sorry. Okay. But when people say, you know, we're not in the same place religiously, I mean, you've got to have a very, very superficial definition of religious to think that you can be in the same place religiously as anybody. You know, meaning, like, yes, certainly superficially from the outside, you can be different places, but your connection to whatever it is, God, good, spirituality, religion, it's such a personal journey. No one's in the same place. Let's just put that out there. Okay, like you'll be like a freak of nature if you met someone who is exactly the same place as you. We all have our different struggles. Okay, so let's make it clear. But having said that, we are talking about sharing values and you know, recognizing that if you don't share values, it can really create problems, like we said, with prioritization and respect and meaning. So I'm going to give you the sort of like gamut of how to deal with this so that you can make sure that you are not saying yes when you shouldn't or no when you shouldn't. Okay, so here's like this. Right, let's take that couple who it's unbelievable, they are at the same place religiously. Okay, it's unbelievable. You know, every contradiction that he has, she has. Every point of inspiration that he has, she has. You know, she likes Shabbat, he likes Shabbat. She wants to, you know, go to disco parties. He wants to. It's like perfect. Okay. Is this a perfect shidduch? We don't know. Why don't we know? Because the question is not whether you're at the same point. That would just be a fluke of nature, really. The question is twofold. What's driving you and where is it leading you? All right. So imagine that couple, the one where they, like I said, they have the same points of inspiration and they have the same points of conflict. However, when you look closely at them, you know, she is getting more and more conflicted and he's getting more and more inspired. What's that couple going to look like in 2 years' time? Well, all the points of, if you like, you know, conflict, contradiction, or what people might call hypocrisy, have built and taken him away from, you know, anything religious. And all her points of inspiration have built and taken her more inwards to this experience. They are maybe at an exact cross point, but if you widen this picture, they're at a cross point because they're actually going like this, right? He's going over there, she's going over there, or up or down, whatever it is. People being at the same point is a fluke. The question is, what's driving you and where is it going to look like? Because that's the point of prioritization, of respect, and of meaning. So I can have someone, and I've seen this very often, who is way ahead of me in terms of what, you know, our quote unquote spiritual levels. But I am very comfortable where I am, okay, or they're very comfortable where they are, even though they're ahead of me. And I'm on a growth path, like a really, really, really serious growth path, because they like their rituals. And I'm into like truth and growth. What are we going to look like in 2 years' time? Yeah, this person who was way ahead of me, I'm going to now have totally outgrown. This is a question of the tortoise and the hare. Now, it could be that we're going to land in different places too. Okay, that can happen. Very often couples will have different places of expression. But if when we go back and we look at what's driving us, when we look at what we care about, what we look at what we respect and where it's taking us, it's in that place we'll discover whether we have enough mutual overlap to respect each other. If I can turn around to, you know, to my spouse or my partner, and what we are bound by is authentic truth and growth, it doesn't have to be that we have the same pace or even necessarily land in the same place. You can't have too much of a contradiction because that's difficult lifestyle wise. But if you have enough going for each other, that we can make space because we respect each other's processes, we're going to have a much easier time than if you think growth is ridiculous and I think, you know, you are a rituals-based superficial person because I'm growing, you know, and you're just into your rituals but don't really care why. Okay, so we've got to get to the bottom of it, and this concept is going to come up in so many areas of life, where when you look at things very lifestyle-wise, if you look at what I would call the presenting, we may have a lot in common or we may have very little in common. But when you go to the underlying, suddenly, you know, we either have loads in common, even though our lifestyle is different, or nothing in common, right? Even though our lifestyle is the same. And if you think about it, take somebody in a lifestyle, take a doctor, take a lawyer, take a businessman, and you'll notice that each one of these people, if you go to what is their underlying drive, you'll be able to come up with a list of 5 different things. Okay, there's a businessman. One's in business because he truly wants to, you know, contribute to the world economy because he cares about the, you know, planet and philanthropy. One's in business because he's driven by a hunger for money. One's in business because he's got a terrible chip on his shoulder about not being approved of, and this is what's going to get his like dad's approval, right? One's in business because everybody else in his family is in business and he's a bit of a sheep. One's it, right? You see, you're going to have a lifestyle where if you go back to what's driving them, you're going to have 4 completely different people who have nothing in common. And if you look at that take any one of those underlying causes, it can translate itself into 4 very different human beings. Okay, that person who is driven to help the economy might be in business or in philanthropy or in, you know, ecology or in spiritual healing, right? So once you've gotten to the underlying cause, that's when you know whether you are in the same page when it comes to, again, respect, prioritization, and meaning. The ability to respect them and what's driving them and where they're going. Even if you're not in the same place, even if you don't even land in the same place, you respect each other's journeys. You've got more in common than someone who accidentally, as it were, you know, their lifestyle and your lifestyle seem to overlap, or their contradictions and your contradictions seem to overlap, or their habits and your habits seem to overlap. So don't get too quick to judge somebody and the external. And if you think you found someone who really matches, make sure that you've taken this down a notch and asking what's driving them. Do I respect that? And where's this going to be taking us? Right? I see this all the time with people who make massive changes in their life. This is something that people who know me have heard me say before, right? People make massive changes in their life. Very often, they're not making very deep changes in their core values. They've just gotten in touch with their core values, and it's shaping and forming their life's experience. You've got to know what's at the core, what's at the underlying. This total discrepancy between that which is the presenting and that which is the underlying can really, really trick us. Okay, So, so make sure that you, first and foremost, to be able to do this, you have to know what's your underlying, what's your driving force, okay? You might have a driving force and your blocks are coming from some psychological pain. You know, once the psychological pain's resolved, you're free to fly. You know, we've all got our different stories. The place of values lies in the presenting. It doesn't, in the underlying, it doesn't lie in the presenting. So can I marry someone who is in a different place to me spiritually, ambitiously, religiously? As far as I'm concerned, you don't have to be the same as the other person, but you need to be able to look at them and say, I really love what's driving your journey. And I'm so committed to the values that's driving your journey that I'm happy to take the risk of growth and change, because the premises of your journey is something that I can really deeply connect to. Once you've got that, you're ready to go on an adventure. You know, nobody knows what they're gonna look like. I hope none of us knows what we're gonna look like in 10 years' time. I hope that. I wish for all of you that you have no idea what you look like in 10 years' time. I wish it for me. I hope that our journeys are inspired and adventurous, but they will be guided by the things that we deeply care about. And if we partner with someone who cares about the things that we care about, then we'll go on a very exciting, unpredictable journey together. And that's not a terrifying idea. That suddenly becomes a great idea, because we share that which directs our journeys. Is that clear? That makes sense, everybody? Yeah? Does anybody want to ask a question on that? No? Okay, cool. All right. Oh, perfect. Off to the land of Avadra, I think. See you. Have a great day.
Okay, hi everyone. How are you all doing? Okay, let me ask you a question for those of you I can see. So I'm going to ask a question. You can respond by shouting out, screaming, blinking 3 times. And those of you who I can't see and can't hear will just have to respond telepathically. But here's my question. Who is currently, or has at some point, struggled with the concept of work-life balance? Hooray, everyone. I'm not happy that everyone's struggling with it, but I am happy that at least the problem I'm addressing is a real problem and that I'm not just creating one. So I want to look at a concept in work-life balance that I like to use, which is really to try to replace the concept of work-life balance with work-life synergy. Because if you think about it, balance means that there's a constant battle, okay? Because it's very, very hard to get 2 different things balanced. You know, if you look at kids on a seesaw, or if you look at someone measuring something with a scale, balance is always tense and always fragile and always temporary, meaning nothing that is growth-based can ever truly be balanced. If you think about it, if we are growing, meaning if we have 2 things on the scale and we get them balanced, in order for them to stay balanced, they need to both be dead. Correct? So if they're both growing, then you're going to be constantly losing balance. If we're growing personally, then our personal life will outbalance our work life. And if we're trying to progress professionally and financially, then our work life will always be outbalancing. So there's going to be constantly a tension. One gets higher than the other, or in many cases, just like one goes like that, and the other one just goes further and further down. So that's the problem with trying to find balance. However, if we try to find synergy, a different thing happens. What happens when 2 things are separate but synergized? The more one grows, the more the other grows. So that's the idea, is to try to synergize our work life and our life and all of the other components and sub-responsibilities in both of them. Now, it's not always easy, and obviously it's going to depend on what you do for a living, but there are some parts of it we can control. So I'm going to do a quick bit of screen share and hope that this works out. No, the host disabled participant screen sharing. Team Justifi, can I please share my screen? It's important. Okay, for the meantime, right? I'm just trying. Okay, thank you. Let me try again to share screen. Aha. Okay. So I'm sharing a graphic with you. Can you all see it? Okay, great. Here's my question first of all, have you seen this diagram before? Okay, good. Because, like when you deal with different places, like there's always a danger when you're in one corner of the world, despite the fact that we have the internet and everyone knows everything, you could come across something and think it's new, but in another country, everyone knows from it. And it was like, yesterday's jam. So one always has to check. But first of all, this was quite a surprise to me. This is a screenshot basically from a book that I read recently. And I want you to ignore the Japanese word in the middle for now, because I don't want to focus on that too much. But what I want to really do is see what we can get out of this. And I'm short on time, and our guest speaker's really good, so I don't want to go over at all. So this might be something I have to carry on next time. But we see basically that the concept of work-life synergy is to try to take what we love and what we're good at doing and what other people benefit from us doing and what we can make a few bucks doing, and find a thing we can spend time on that is in the middle, that is all of those things. Now, we all have to sometimes do things that other people need us to do, and that's the only reason we're doing them. The world needs it, and that's it. And we all have to sometimes do things that we are only doing for the monies, and we all have to sometimes do things that we only do because we love them, which is great. And sometimes we do something just because we are good at it. And there's obviously a lot of overlap between what we're good at and what we love doing. And there's a lot of natural overlap between what you can be paid for and what the world needs. But the key to work-life synergy is to find ways to blend those two sides, that what I love and what I'm good at, making those overlap more with what the world needs and what I can be paid for. And the more time we spend doing something that hits 2 or 3 or ideally 4 of those circles, the happier and the more productive we are. But here's the key insight I want to share with you. We tend to think that certain things here are in our control and certain things not. And really, they're all in our control to an extent and all kind of not. But we often think that what we can be paid for and what the world needs are, a mistake would be to think that those are in our control. But we often also think that what we love doing and what we're good at are also out of our control. We can choose to get good at something a bit, we all sort of know by practice, but we have this conception that I'm good at certain things and not good at other things, right? And we've had experiences through school and through childhood and through adulthood that reinforce that there are certain things I'm not good at. And we also have a conception that what I happen to enjoy, what I happen to love is out of my control. And I really believe that that is not true, that what the world needs and what we can be paid for is harder for us to control, but not entirely out of our control. And we spend our work lives doing things that the world needs done and that we can be paid for. But the truth is we have the ability to love those things more, to get better at those things. And I don't want to go over time. I'm going to take 1 minute to sum this up. But basically, I believe that with curiosity comes love. And anything that we choose to be more curious about, we will come to love more. And an example I had was, kitchens. About 5 years ago, my wife and I decided to renovate our kitchen and redo our kitchen. And, I have been in many kitchens in my life. I've made myself many omelets and many sandwiches and many cups of tea in my life. And I've never really noticed the different materials the kitchen counter was made out of. But it's a kitchen counter. I never really noticed the difference and how important that difference was. When you now build your own kitchen, you find out that there are many, many materials you can use. And each of those materials, there are many like subsections and sub-qualities, and there's this whole world. And then the guy comes around to sell you different surfaces, whether you're using granite or quartz or chipboard or whatever, right? And he is like, this guy was just in love with Caesar stone, which I thought was granite, but it's not granite, right? If you really know, he was in love with Caesar stone because it's got higher density than granite, and therefore you can have a 2 centimeter thick kitchen counter instead of a 4 centimeter thing. And like, he was so enthusiastic about this, and I got enthusiastic about it, and it came to me that every time I went into someone's kitchen, I got really interested in like, oh, you're using the locally made cafe quartz instead of the imported Caesar stone, right? And like, it became interesting. Now, I'm sort of over that phase, by the way. I'm a cool guy, and that didn't last forever. But the fact is, whatever it is you need to do, if you become more curious about it, it becomes more interesting. And if it becomes more interesting, it becomes something you love. And if it's something you love, it becomes something you're good at. And if it's something you're good at, it's going to be ultimately something that you can use to serve the world in a greater way. And not to make it all about that, because we're not mercenaries, but if it becomes all of those things, it just might become something that you can also make a little bit of money for as well. So that's an idea, a really nice graphic that I thought summed up this book really nicely. So now you don't need to read the whole book, which is called Ikigai, the Japanese Art of a Happy Life or something. Because really that picture sums it all up. So feel free to send me a message if you have any questions. I'm glad to have shared that with you, but I want to move right on to our special guests.
Hi. Well, I'm not the special guest. But we're all special guests. But before we do the special guest, Brian, who's there as the Team Justify icon, just wants to introduce a quick poll. And I was really hoping that you guys would just do us a favor. He's gonna send it out right now, so you all have it. It's a 2-second poll. We've had a lot of people asking us about travel inside of the United States. Everything that we're doing is going to be predicated on a very, very high level of total safety, etc. That's a given, okay? If that's not in place, if we can't ensure it, if research shows that it's garbage and you can't really, then we're not doing it. It's understood, okay? But assuming that things can be done properly and safely, and there's no risk to anybody, etc., etc., we've had a lot of interest in trips, and so we just a very quick poll. To see, just out of interest, as a sample, as to how you might feel about coming on a trip. So could you fill out the poll for a second, please, guys? It should be there on your screens. And we'll go quiet for a couple of seconds.
Okay, thanks, Jim. We'll give everybody 10 more seconds to fill out the poll, because we have some very wonderful and special guests today. I'm going to pin them up here, in fact. Let's see. Here we go.
Hello.
Okay, last chance for the poll. All right, I want to welcome today Steve Marcinick and Juliana Zulaga Madrid. We're very happy to have them with us today. And they're coming live from Bogota, Colombia. Now, Steve, many of you know personally. Steve has been, was one of the original Justify participants 10 years ago. You can believe it's been that long, as well as worked for Justify for many years, and now moved to Colombia a couple of years ago, and is engaged to marry Juliana very soon, we hope. And we're going to hear a little bit about them and their story. But just to introduce Steve a little bit. Steve, you're an entrepreneur. You've done all kinds of very fascinating things. You work for amazing organizations and companies, including starting your own. You're an Ivy Leaguer. You've executive vagabond, I think is your favorite title, traveling the world for many years at a time before settling down in South America. And you find yourself in Colombia. Now, Colombia is an interesting country. When I was growing up in the 1980s, Colombia was probably the scariest and most dangerous place on earth. It was run by gangs and mafias, and they were more powerful than the government. It was the subject of movies. It was the worst place, most scary place to go. You move down there, and you're a very smart person. You meet wonderful people. We meet incredible people in Colombia, like Juliana. What is going on in Colombia? And I'll also add that now, if you look at the internet says that Colombia ranks among the happiest places on earth to live. It's like a Scandinavian country. What is going on over there?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for the very kind introduction, and it's nice to see a lot of friendly faces who I've been to many different parts of the world with: Thailand, Nicaragua, Peru, Sri Lanka. It's a pleasure to reconnect. It's like talking to some old friends. It quite literally is in many cases. So I'd say for me, I think to give some background to Colombia, I think that most folks, yeah, the reputation you discuss is accurate, and it's what most people think of when they think of Colombia. Most people think of Pablo Escobar, they're narco-traficantes, but it actually goes even a lot deeper than that. In 2016, Colombia actually ended the world's longest running civil war. It was a 50-year civil war that ended in 2016. And Juliana can speak to that more first person, but one of my most formative experiences being in Medellin was that went to a museum called Museo de la Memoria, like Museum of the Memorial, of the Memory. And so in the United States, we have museums of certain wars, of certain tragedies, of certain occasions in history. We have the Holocaust Memorial Museum, Vietnam Museum, things like that. This museum, I remember to me, it made such an impact because it wasn't about a specific event or specific tragedy. It was just basically like a series of almost uninterrupted violence, conflict, tragedy that stretched from, I mean, the 20s, the turn of the century, I mean, just for decades and decades and decades, because there were, the line between who was the good guys, the bad guys, there was just such blurry lines of violence that had such a horrible impact on the daily lives of many people. And within our generation, I mean, you and your family lived through that in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, well, thank you all for inviting us to this session. I'm very happy to share our story. And I will start by saying, adding to what Steve just said, well, I was born in Medellin, which is probably known as a motor capital of the world for a while. It's terrible. And during the 80s or 90s, early 90s, there was just violence as it was just our life. That was just what it was. Our reality was violence. Every other day you would hear of a car exploding in front of a police station or a mall or anywhere. And well, it was the late 80s and early 90s. There were no cell phones really. So people would just go running to their houses and calling the people they knew just to make sure that everyone was safe or that the bomb hadn't affected a close member of the family. So every time I heard some bangs on the street, I knew that was not fireworks, those were shootings. And it was just part of how we grew up. And that actually affected me and my family personally. We were forced to move outside of Medellin because of some threats against our security or safety, being kidnapped, and we ended up living in a countryside part of a town outside of Medellin, like an hour from Medellin.
Yeah, and as you were saying, I mean, we were looking into this, trying to put it in perspective. In 1991, 1992, there were, in Medellin, a city of just a couple million people, there were 6,000 murders a year. In the country, there were 20,000 plus violent deaths per year. I mean, that's more than all the folks who died, I think, in recent wars from the United States side, in like Afghanistan and Iraq. Like, that's 20 murders a day for over the course of years and years and years in a city that's not that large. Some of those, largely the result of the narco-traficantes, Pablo Escobar, like they were putting out hits against the police officers.
So how does a country with that incredible level of frightening violence, I mean, Juliana, you grew up with unbelievably scary phenomena. How does a country turn the corner? There are many places in the world like that now where there are, plagued by violence and corruption. How do places turn the corner?
Well, I would say that Colombians were tired of the violence. It had been going for years and years. The violence and the deaths were affecting the most vulnerable, really.
Yeah.
Soldiers were the sons of poor families, and the people who were fighting in the forests and in the jungle were the sons of farmers who started the whole thing back in the 50s and the 60s. And so Colombia was more than ready for a reconciliation, and we just needed some sort of framework that would make that possible. And that's what was achieved back in 2016. But I would say that even before that, there was a very hard work at reconciliation with the victims, where one of the most important things was truth. Just get truth about what happened to your family and your loved ones and everything you lost, and not just some sort of reparation or economic whatever you could get from the government because you were a victim. And also many of the victims were also victimizers. So just going through that was, I think, sort of healing for everyone. And well, how did Colombia become one of the happiest places on earth? That is something that is remarkable, I would say. But I think it's got something to do definitely with that idea of where we come from, what we had to go through, and the things that we now value, because those weren't things we had before, like safety and being able to live in peace and visit your family and have your loved ones come to your celebrations and just have a peaceful life where you can get an opportunity to be someone useful for society and to achieve things that you dream of. And it's not being stopped by some random violence that can just, at the, turning a corner, can just finish all of your dreams in a second without any reason at all.
Yeah.
So, Juliana, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're from Medellin. Your family moved out to a more rural area, but you weren't only in Colombia. You're a very sophisticated person, very well educated. You're an environmental attorney. You received a PhD. You lived in Europe. You lived in Israel. You lived in America. You had a lot of opportunities to go all over the place in the world, and now you're back in Colombia. What's your story?
Okay, well, I would say that, well, since this was my reality growing up, I didn't think of myself as being any less equipped or any less able to achieve things that I wanted to do with my life than everyone else. I just thought this was the world and everyone faced similar difficulties. So for me, it never occurred that I had excuses or reasons to not fight for what I wanted. And so I wanted to study. I thought that I really wanted to study abroad and see the world and understand other cultures. And that's why when I graduated college at this very small town outside of Medellin, I decided that I wanted to do my master's in Europe. And that led me to go to Belgium, where I did my master's in environmental law. And then I got in touch with, well, academia and the possibility to do a PhD and pursue further education. I came back to Colombia and I started working as a corporate lawyer, but at the same time, I was motivated to just go beyond what was just given to me in a way. Like, I wasn't sure that everyone wanted the same things, even though that would be like kind of the reasonable thing to do. Maybe just stay, find a job, and try to follow a path that is already been followed before and it's like kind of easy to follow. I really thought that the world was out there and why wouldn't I want to explore it more? So when I decided to do a PhD, it was definitely not something that people in Colombia do. I mean, they do, don't get me wrong, there are PhDs in Colombia as well. It's just that it's not as common as other countries, especially if you're not a full-time professor. So it was something that it just really resonated with me. I find it very meaningful to just learn more and grow and just use your potential to keep learning through your whole life. And so I was actually going to graduate from my PhD last May 8th, but then we had to postpone that too, of course. Yeah. But after I finish my PhD, I really don't think I'm done at all. Yeah. Like, I want to pursue economics and I want to do more a postdoc, or even if it's just learning some new things like skills, like other things that have nothing to do with the law. I still think that this is something that moves me and that is significant to me. And as long as I'm able to keep learning things, I'd be happy, in a way. So that's something that I really love. And well, after working for 6 years, really just like basically in the same day, in the same week, I quit my job and I took a year to finish my PhD thesis and travel. And also, well, by this time, this was 2018, I had already gotten in contact with Judaism and I was learning so much, and I really wanted to explore that more. So that's what led me to go to, well, first Portland and Washington, D.C., to these wonderful universities as a visiting researcher, and to Jerusalem, also as a researcher at the Hebrew University Jerusalem. And that's where I also finished my contact and studying Judaism that led to my conversion ultimately.
Well, that's an amazing story. You're such an accomplished, amazing person. Tell us a little bit, Stephen, Juliana, what's going on with Corona in Colombia? Are people scared? Is the medical system up to it? Is there testing? Is there a lockdown? Everyone, of course, all over the world, with people connecting in from the US, from Canada, from Israel, I think from the UK even I saw someone sneaking in. People are all over and we're all impacted in our own ways. What's it like in Colombia now?
Sure. I'm happy to speak about that. And also I just want to tie in like what we're talking about here with a lot of the lessons that we've been talking about in these Justifi Power Hours. I mean, I think that, from Juliana's story of pursuing an untraditional path from the Colombian side to me pursuing a path that's not super traditional from Connecticut to Philadelphia, et cetera. I think a lot of this stuff, I just wanted to advocate for a lot of the lessons that you guys are all talking about. And just from Ovadia just now to Alana's classes about relationships, about understanding, we have certain potentials that we're inclined to pursue. And then even though they might not be the predetermined or pre-suggested path, advocating for yourself and trying to do what you can to pursue those. So I think that's one of the things that we, thank God, have in common. And one of the points we connected on, just to plug for Justify the kind of.
We did not pay for that commercial, but thank you anyway, Steve.
I used to be part of the team, so I believe
always part of the team.
Drank the Kool-Aid. I'll put it that way. In terms of Colombia's situation, it's a more vulnerable country with a more vulnerable and more fragile medical system. So there are no international flights in or out of the country until September at the earliest. We cannot go from city to city right now at all. Like, we're allowed to go out for an hour or two a day occasionally. It's only recently that we've been able to go out 2 people at a time. All gatherings of any kind are supposed to be are canceled. On a personal note, today was supposed to be our wedding date. We had to postpone that until at least November. We're going to try to push something through a little earlier, but it's certainly been disruptive, to say the least. And no one knows. I mean, I think that on one hand, it's a nice thing the government is doing what it can to try to protect the people, especially the vulnerable populations. But yeah, you got stories of so many of the people who are here are so much of the economy is informal. So people are, not even losing their jobs. It's just like they were selling avocados on the street, and now there's no one on the street to buy avocados. You had 2 million people fled from Venezuela to Colombia in search of better opportunities, and their better opportunity was begging on the streets, and now they're going back in droves by the tens of thousands going back to Venezuela because there's nowhere further to fall. And so I think that's one of the things that I, as a North American, have taken for granted, is that the government is even in a position to help the population in some ways. Whether you agree with the specific policies or not, like that's a different issue, but there's just not so much the government can do. And so right now, if you're over 70, you can't leave the house. It's rough. I'm not sure if there's anything to add to that, but that's what it is. Yeah.
We only have a couple minutes left. You should know there's all kinds of messages happening on the chat here, some in the public group, some privately. Everyone's very impressed by the two of you, which is really nice to hear. You can, of course, send the messages in the chat, or you can email us and we can forward it on. But Steve and Juliana, leave us with a good story. We like to leave on a positive note. We're living in scary times. Everybody likes great stories. Tell us something wonderful happening to you or in your community. Before you tell the story, just a couple brief announcements. First of all, I'm not sure if we'll say this or not, but Steve and Juliana were actually supposed to get married today. Today was our actual wedding day, and we're very happy with that mazel tov. But unfortunately, due to the geographical and logistical constraints due to Corona, traveling family, rabbis, etc., they were not able to, so it pushed off a couple of months, but we love them and we're looking forward to sharing in their lots of simcha and mazel. I also want to make a special shout out to my mom, who's joining the call today as well, which is also very, very, very nice, special treat. Okay, Steve and Juliana, leave us with a positive note and then a great story.
Well, let's say that we talk about the community we're close with over in Medellin. There's a community there in Bejo, which is a community just outside of Medellin, very, very impoverished place, people living on mere dollars per day in terms of income, folks who basic work in restaurants or construction or things like that, very impoverished, but very, very passionate Jewish community. And I think that what we're seeing across the country and in this community specifically is a lot of movement towards helping each other. I mean, I think one of the benefits Juliana touched on, one of the reasons folks here have found happiness through tragedy and challenge is that the communities come together, they support each other, they do what they can to get through together. So I think that in this community specifically, through the help actually of some folks on this call, we did some fundraising through the Justifi network, through our own personal network, and around Pesach, there were a lot of folks who they literally were so poor that they could not afford the $25 they needed to make a Pesach Seder. And through the generosity of friends, community, family, we were able to raise a couple $1,000s and provide Pesach Seders and support for them so they could have food for Pesach and ongoing for literally hundreds of families. And so I think that is a silver lining or a positive byproduct of what we're seeing is communities stepping in to support each other, even when there aren't necessarily strong centralized organizations that are able to do that work.
And I may add to that you can see this sort of solidarity all over the spectrum. Like even the poor people that you would think have nothing to give, like when they would come to their houses with grocery bags, some of them would actually say, please don't give it to me, give it to my neighbor. They need it more than I do. And also I have this extra pound of rice, just take it to someone who needs it more than I do. And that has gone like beyond what anyone expected. Like it brings us all together because there's a strong feeling of being joined in this tragedy, because we have suffered some tragedies before that also brought us together, because this was the thing that we all had to suffer through. And so everyone had a friend or a family member or someone from close to us that was murdered or kidnapped or threatened or had to flee. And that is what ultimately made us very able to understand the position of others, made us more tolerant, and helped us prioritize what is important. And what is important, really, we all know it, it's just that sometimes we forget, is family, the ability to see them, just being safe, just knowing that your life is not going to end tomorrow by a random act of violence, and just finding a reason to believe that there's hope in the future. I mean, it's not really believing there is a reason, it's finding a reason to believe.
Amen.
Wow. Okay. Well, first of all, guys, I'm really sorry that that we weren't all able to be there dancing at your wedding today. But I'm really happy that we're able to do a little dance for you now. I'm sure that's not much of a consolation. but I'll save the really good moves for when the wedding actually happens and I'm there. Okay.
Thanks.
But I wanted to thank you guys very much. Thank you, Brian, for setting this up. Thank you guys. Thank you for everyone who showed up today. And, you know, as is becoming maybe a bit of the tradition, just to kind of round things up at the end, you know, one of the important things about Justifi and about the messages that we're trying to share over here, and it's really part of the overarching Jewish culture, is to understand the spirit of possibility. You know, everyone lives within certain boundaries and borders. There's not much we can do, like about our age. You know, we just can't transcend that. You know, you can't transcend who your parents were or the places that you were born. You know, there's just kind of certain fixed realities. But so much of the things that make us sad in life, things that, yeah, if we got distance from them and controlled our thinking, we could relate to in a more positive way. But there's a lot of things in our life that we struggle, just technical realities that we accept as permanent and as fundamental, that hold us back. And they're not really permanent. They're not really fundamental. And I think that Steve and Juliana are really good examples of this, of just, you know, you can take your skills and you can go live somewhere else. Like, you actually really can. You know, you can build a relationship, you know, that's different than what, you know, you might have thought of. You can start businesses or earn a living or be involved, create a reality for yourself that actually suits your deeper aspirations, and not accept the kind of restriction of, well, you know, this is just the way that it is, and there's nothing I can do about it, and I'm just going to make the best of it, and this, that, and the other. And I think that's such an important lesson, again, in terms of fixing the world, in terms of fixing ourselves, in terms of building a better world, in terms of building a life that we're really proud of, is to really take time to examine what in my life am I treating as if it's permanent, even though it's holding me back. And the truth is, it's not permanent, it's not fixed, and it need not hold me back. And whether that's the mindset of the Colombian people to just not deal with the violence anymore, to just love through it, to just push through it, to reconcile, right? Whether it's that's in a huge way, or whether it's in a smaller way, just in terms of looking at our own lives and saying, I am determined to live differently. That is a very powerful and important part of what being Jewish is about what being human is about what Justifi is about. And I think, you know, Steve and Juliana, you know, you really exemplify that, but everyone on this call, in each in their own way, you know, we're all trying to find our way through that and to live that better and better. So I just want to thank you guys for being such a fabulous example, and encourage everyone on the call and everyone out there who's listening to, you know, to break the boundaries and live the lives that the world needs us to live, so that we can really fix this planet. So I wish everyone really well. This week is Shavuot, so I wish everyone a Chag Sameach for Thursday night and Friday night, and we should all, you know, receive the Torah, wisdom, all of these ideas, live beyond our boundaries, you know, and emerge empowered and ready to change the world.